I don't know where or what.
Call the meeting to order, please.
Scratch.
Supervisor McCarthy, would you lead us in invocation, please, sir?
Yes. Bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you bestowed upon the citizens of Frederick County. We ask that you guide us in our deliberations this evening, grant us wisdom and prudence, and the courage to do what is best for the citizens of our great county. We ask that you watch over and protect our men and women in uniform and all those who put themselves in harm's way for the benefit of our community. We ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Amen.
Chairman Lofton, you lead us in the pledge, please, sir.
Would you stand and face the flag for our pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adoption of the agenda. Are there any proposed changes?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman.
The board like to handle the agenda?
Move for approval as presented.
Second.
Approved as presented. And the second, is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Brings us to consent agenda. The board like to handle that?
I would move for approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Motion to approve is presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Citizen comments on an agenda item that is not subject to public hearing. Does anyone have anything? Did anyone sign up?
No, sir.
Thank you. Board of Supervisors comments, are there any? Hearing none. Vice Chairman Lofton, would you give me a hand, please? Ms. Rogers, if you would join us, we'd appreciate it. Okay. The Employee of the Month Award Program recognizes the county's employees as an important and valuable resource. On behalf of the Board of Supervisors, it's my pleasure to present Patricia A. Rogers as Employee of the Month for May 2018. Patricia A. Rogers serves as a booking technician with the Northwestern Regional Adult Detention Center. Patricia is heavily relied on by the booking staff for her in-depth knowledge of policies and booking procedures. Ms. Rogers assisted in training several new booking staff members with a calm, pleasant demeanor. She shows a passion for mentoring others and makes herself available to assist anyone with questions. On several occasions, Ms. Rogers has changed her work schedule, sometimes at a moment's notice, to assist with an influx of new committals for the day. Ms. Rogers recently received a letter of appreciation from a judge at the courthouse through Superintendent Whitley, acknowledging her efforts to ensure that inmates were able to participate in a hearing in court by audiovisual means. She went out of her way to accommodate the request and assured that the process ran smoothly. The Board of Supervisors extends its gratitude to Patricia for her outstanding performance, dedicated service, and wishes her continued success in future endeavors. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Rogers for a job well done.
Okay. If I need a pen, I'll borrow it from you. I love mine.
Sorry, Bob, let me see if I
Don't
can.
worry about it. Like,
Make it full.
so wait, looking for another pen. Make sure I get it back.
I'm missing a piece of paper. All right, brings us to committee appointments. Social Services Board, Redbud.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Ryan Shaw as the appointee. He is a well-qualified gentleman who I think can balance the needs of those that have needs of this board with discernment and wisdom. I gave you all some information. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them, but I would nominate him.
For nominations, or a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Will bring us to Board of Building Appeals, which I believe we're still looking for someone.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Community Policy Board Management Team, we do have a recommendation from the team to reappoint Dana Bowman and Dawn C. Robbins. How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to make the reappointment of Dana Bowman and Dawn C. Robbins to their respective representative status on the CPMT.
Heard the motion, is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second, any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. We're both appointed. Development Impact Model Oversight, we did just this evening receive a reply back from Topper, Virginia. There it is. Thank you. I lost my piece of paper. So Topper, Virginia would recommend Steve Petler be reappointed and Rob Frogale be appointed as their representatives. So how would the board like to handle the Development and Impact Model Oversight Committee reappointments?
Are we also putting Mr. Frank Wright in there?
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I would move that.
and the PC folks, Planning
Exact-
Commission folks.
Yes, sir. I would move that the Planning Commission names that are up for approval, and Frankie Wright, Stephen Bettler, and Rob Frogale be appointed to serve on the Development Impact Mode Oversight Committee.
And the other admin and board members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And the second, is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Thank you. Extension Leadership Council, Stonewall.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I spoke with Mr. Sutphin of the Extension Leadership Council, and he has reached out to Mrs. Loving, and we're still waiting to hear back from her. So I'm hopeful that she'll.
Certainly hopeful that she can. She's done an
Absolutely.
outstanding job there.
Yes.
Historic Resources Advisory Board, a member at large. Have we reached out to Mr. Perry? No? Maybe we should do that. We have time, that's June, I think. Parks and Recs, Stonewall.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I have spoken with Mr. Robertson of Parks and Rec, who reached out to Mr. Carter, who is now serving as chairman of the Parks and Rec Commission, and very happily to report that he is willing to continue to serve and does an outstanding job in that position. So very thankful to have him.
Absolutely, he's done a great job there. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, no. We'll reappoint Mr. Carter. That brings us to the Social Services Board. Both eligible for reappointment. How would the board like to handle those?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, the Back Creek representative on the Social Services Board, Ms. Lisa Carper, I have spoken with her. She is willing and looking forward to being reappointed to that position, and I would so move.
So you've heard the motion.
Second.
Lisa Carper be reappointed.
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. And Shawnee District.
Mr. Chairman, I have seen Ms. Kimball's resume. It's quite impressive, and I would move that she be reappointed for the Shawnee District Representative to Social Services Board.
Thank you. Heard the motion. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Ms. Kimball is reappointed. Winchester Regional Airport Authority, that one is June. I'd like to delay action on that one if we could. Last time I spoke with Mr. Fisher, he was particularly unhappy, so let's give him a chance to reconsider. That's all right with the board.
Yes.
Thank you. And that will bring us to the request from the Commissioner of Revenue for refunds. Mr. Tierney?
Mr. Chairman, you have four items before you in the way of refunds. The first is for our, Arcadia Mobile Home Park in the amount of $3,313.81. That's related to business and personal property tax due to the sale of business. Next is a forgivance based on a disabled veteran. This is a widow of a disabled veteran. $372.53. The third is Shop and Save, and that's in the amount of $6,282.43 and relates to business and license taxes due to the closure of a store. And the last one is Handy Mart in the amount of $6,885.69 due to the reclassification of some equipment. Each of these has been reviewed by the commissioner and the county attorney and approved. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions if you have.
Are there any questions? How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman, I would move for approval of the refund for Arcadia Mobile Park in the amount of $3,313.81. The widow disabled veterans relief in the amount of $3,372.53. Shop and Save due to store closure, $6,282.43. And Handy Mart LLC, $6,885.69. Move for approval of the refund and the corresponding supplemental appropriation.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Is there any discussion? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. That brings us to the end of section. Brings us to public hearing. Proposed ordinance amendment, salary of the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman, this is an annual event where the board sets their salaries for the coming fiscal year. The salaries, as you adopt them, would be effective July 1st of 2018. Current salaries are as follows. The chairman is $10,800 a year. Vice chair is $10,200 a year. And then each other member of the board receives $9,000 a year. There are limits to which you can adjust your annual salary. And at the current point in time, any increase that you may choose to do would have to be related to an inflationary increase. And we can get into details of what those parameters are if the board would like.
Are there any questions of Mr. Tierney? Anyone? All right. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning the proposed salaries of the Board of Supervisors for the coming fiscal year? Anyone at all? Yes, ma'am. Yes, please. If you would, if we could have your name, magisterial district, and limit your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Yes, my name is Karen Vance. I'm from Shawnee District, and I'd like to speak to this subject of a raise for you all. It may not be very popular. I know I'm being televised, so there's a lot of people maybe would speak more, but they wouldn't want to be seen. But I do think that it is time for a raise for you all. I moved here 3 years ago, and when I started becoming involved in the Frederick County government issues and learning about it, and I heard that your all's salary was $9,000 to $10,000, I didn't believe it. It just was unbelievable, and so when I checked into it, indeed, that was the case. I am familiar with my home county, which is over in the mountains, west in West Virginia. It's a very depressed economic in the economy, and those commissioners receive $42,000 a year. They don't have near what you all have to do. The comparison of what they do and you do, it's just impossible to draw. And some of the research that I looked into, Warren County supervisors received $28,000, Fairfax $95,000, and Loudoun near $70,000. Now, I realize Loudoun and Fairfax is a large county, but the school system make comparisons, so I thought I'd throw them in there. There's been no raise here within like around 15 years. Now, I'm very conservative on issues that involve taxpayer money, but I don't believe that this is outside the realm of conservative behavior. Even the scripture proclaims that the workman is worthy of his wages. So you are faced with demands on many fronts for money. It is now time, I believe, to address a fair wage for the important work you all do. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Anyone? And we'll close the public comment portion. How would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Dunn.
last year, or 2 years ago, I made a significant request on a salary increase. And I got a lot of feedback on that. But just so the record shows, the last time the Board of Supervisors had a raise was the year 2001. If that were adjusted simply for inflation, it would be approximately $13,000 today. If it were adjusted for the salary increases that county employees got, it would be someplace in the neighborhood of $18,000 to $19,000 per year. The inflation factor this year is approximately 2 or 2.1%, and Mr. Tierney can verify that. I think that the work we do is significant, and so I would move to adjust the rate to whatever the CPI is of 2.1%.
Heard the motion. Is there a second? Second? All right, sir, I'm afraid your motion will die for lack of a second.
Thank you.
Mr. Tierney, you wanted to comment or no?
No, I think I'm fine.
Okay, good. So how would the board like to handle this request?
Mr. Chairman, I would move that the salaries of the supervisors be set as noted in our agenda for tonight.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
Second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Supervisor McCarthy.
while I didn't second Mr. Blaine Dunn's motion, I do understand where he's coming from. One of my concerns for the future is our Board of Supervisors, the median age tends to be older. The folks who have the luxury of not going to work during the day tend to be older and can do this type of work. One thing I would like us to consider in the future, and I'm not ready to do it tonight, is that we do need to consider that if we're going to attract younger folks who have to work during the day, they are giving up a significant amount of their time and salary in order to do that. And we need to keep that in mind if we're going to keep fresh, new, younger folks on this board. That's all.
Thank you, sir. Others? Other comments?
I'll see you next year, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'll comment. I think that probably we should have this discussion ahead of it appearing on our agenda for our coming year, because if we do want to adjust them at all to speak of, it's going to require a change in the approach that we use. So I think that we could do that if folks have a desire to
That's fine.
continue this discussion.
Thank you, Mr.
Is there
Chairman.
any further discussion? All right. Supervisor Trout.
Yes.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Now is a proposed conveyance to Frederick County Sanitation Authority of an easement. Who is that you, Mr. Tierney?
Mr. Robertson is
Mr.
here. from
Robertson,
Parks
great.
and Rec
I'm
to
sorry.
give you the details.
Thank you, sir.
The Parks and Recreation Commission in April recommended approval of easement request from Frederick County Water. This easement is for the installation of a fire hydrant in Sharando Park in the maintenance compound. The fire hydrant has been installed and the water line has also been installed. So this is to convey the easement to the water authority.
Great. Questions, anyone? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right, this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed easement? Anyone at all? It's an easement within Frederick County Park. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing portion. The board would like to handle this.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the proposed conveyance to the Frederick County Sanitation Authority via the Parks and Recreation Department.
Motion to approve as requested. Sir, second.
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Anyone? Supervisor McCarthy?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. That'll bring us to public hearing for conditional use permit 0418. Mr. Klein?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of Supervisors. This is a conditional use permit for the West Oaks Farm Market, which was submitted for the establishment of a special event facility and restaurant in the RA Rural Areas Zoning District. The 200-acre property is located on Middle Road in Winchester and is identified with property identification number 74A-3 in the Bat Creek Magisterial District. The property, again, is presently zoned RA, rural areas, and the current land use is agricultural. The proposed use is a special event facility for weddings and other similar type events, and a restaurant use. Direct your attention to the screen. The subject property is outlined in black and identified and highlighted in yellow. It is immediately south of Middle Road. It is adjacent to Orchard Ridge Elementary School, Orchard View. It's also north of Springdale Road and is surrounded by other like agricultural uses. There are single-family detached residential uses across Middle Road from the subject property. West Oaks Farm and West Oaks Farm Market is a working farm with orchards, and they're presently constructing a 10,500 square foot by right farmers market building on Middle Road. This conditional use application proposes approximately 3,400 square feet of that building would be dedicated for a special event center in the form of a banquet room, an outdoor picnic shelter that can be utilized by events of the farmers market or by private events, a restaurant with a deli-style counter service with a commercial kitchen, permanent restroom facilities, a designated gravel parking area, and the applicant proposes that special events may accommodate up to 275 persons. Here's two photographs of the building which is under construction. In the bottom right of the screen is a view from the orchards and Middle Road looking towards the front facade of the structure. And the image in the top left is the rear and side of the structure, which is where the special event center will be located. Here's the illustrative sketch plan again provided by the applicant. For orientation, Middle Road provides the frontage of the lot. There is an existing access road to the farm and what will become the farmers market and special event center that is adjacent to Orchard View Elementary School. The applicant is also proposing a second entrance that will serve primarily farm operations and caterers and other accessory vehicles to the special events. You have the farm market, which is situated in the middle of the 200-acre property, with the special event venue located to the rear of the farmers market. And again, they're providing an outdoor picnic shelter, which can be utilized for special events or events associated with the farmers market. This proposed conditional use is generally consistent with our 2035 comprehensive plan, which supports opportunities for agritourism and agribusiness in the county's rural areas. The applicant has addressed all the review agency comments, including those pertaining to site access, compliance with building and fire safety code, and the proposed use is generally consistent with the supplemental use regulations established for special event facilities. Should the Board of Supervisors find this use to be appropriate, the Planning Commission has recommended the following conditions from their May 2nd meeting: that all review agency comments shall be complied with at all times, that an illustrative sketch plan would be submitted to Frederick County and approved by Frederick County prior to the establishment of the special event center and the restaurant use, that building permits would be acquired prior to the establishment of the deli-style counter service restaurant use, that events shall start no earlier than 10 a.m., and all events and related activities would conclude by midnight. That special events may accommodate up to and not to exceed 275 persons. The applicant would be provided one monument-style sign with an area not to exceed 50 square feet and not to exceed 10 feet in height, and that any expansion or modification of this use would require the approval of a new conditional use permit. Following a public hearing this evening, staff is seeking a decision from the Board of Supervisors on this conditional use permit for a proposed special events facility and a restaurant to be located on the property identified with parcel identification number 74-A-3. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and the applicant, Mr. Joe Snap, representing West Oaks Farm, is here this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Supervisor Trout.
Mr. Klein, was it 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. for the start time?
The start time for special events at this facility would be 8 a.m.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions of Mr. Klein? Anyone? Anyone have questions of Mr. and Mrs. Snap? Anyone? Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Would anyone like to comment concerning this proposed conditional use permit? Yes, ma'am.
I'm taking advantage of them coming out. I'm sure you all see the benefit of this, but I stopped out yesterday, and I was just bowled over. I was looking for a place for an event later on, and Mr. Snap and his son Levi gave me a tour, and I have visited some other sites, and it is stupendous. Its location is great. I could go on and on, but it really is something I think would benefit Frederick County and our citizens. So I urge you to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment? Anyone? I'm going to close the public comment portion. It's Back Creek.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to approve the conditional use permit number 04-18 for West Oaks Farm Market LLC with one modification to the conditions. Under condition number 3, Mr. Klein, would you mind putting the conditions back up again? Under condition number 3, in conversations with Mr. Klein and Mr. Snap, it seems prudent to delete the words deli-style counter service and make it just restaurant use. This gives Mr. Snap more flexibility in the use of his establishment without him having to come back at some later time when he decides that he would rather have a sit-down restaurant use. And I think it would just make everything cleaner from the beginning. And so I would make a motion, as I've said, to approve this conditional use permit with that revised condition.
Heard the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if I may, I would just like to, as Mrs. Vance has said, this is certainly a benefit to the county. It promotes agritourism, agribusiness. Even though they've been in business at another location in the county, this expands that operation. It saves valuable farmland, and I think this is just a wonderful addition to the county and Back Creek. So I applaud Mr. and Mrs. Snap for taking this venture, and I would like to see them, I know they'll be very successful. And so I would just like to applaud them for taking this risk, really, and putting that market there. So thank you.
Further discussion, anyone? Well, I'd just like to again, say the same thing, basically. This is just a huge win-win, a wonderful asset for our community. Had the privilege of seeing the facility, and it is just gorgeous.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
If I may add one more thing, that I remember back, I think 2008, 2009, we had a large tract builder looking at that piece of property for houses. That would have sprouted about 40 houses, 30 couple, almost 40 houses in there. And so I think we can all see the benefit of this money-making, tax-making venture as opposed to residential homes in that area.
Thanks, sir. Any further discussion? All right. Supervisor Trout.
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn.
Aye.
Supervisor Lofton.
Aye.
Supervisor Wells.
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter.
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and the motion carries. Conditional use permit 0418 is approved. Congratulations, thank you very much. All right, that will bring us to Master Development Plan 0218 of Regions Crescent for information only. Mr. Klein.
Yes, again, this is information and discussion item, and this is a proposal to develop approximately 8.88 acres of property zoned RP, Residential Performance District, and approximately 1.02 acres of property zoned B2, General Business District, for a total of 9.9 acres into 95 townhome units and 4 single-family small lot attached units. These subject properties were not part of a rezoning or other legislative application. They're historically zoned RP and B2. A prior subdivision design plan was presented to the Board of Supervisors in 2015 for 66 units, which was 24 single-family units and 42 townhome units. Direct your attention to the screen. Subject properties are outlined in black and highlighted in yellow. They're immediately south of Route 522 in the Sunnyside area of Frederick County. The subject properties are accessed via Trafalgar Square, and they're surrounded by other residential uses, including single-family detached residences and Westminster Canterbury development. The 2018 master plan, which revises the 2015 subdivision design plan in lieu of a master plan, proposes 95 townhome units and 4 single-family small lot attached units. The applicant is providing a network of internal streets, including Sage Circle, Rainway, and Lance Way, for the circulation of traffic throughout the development. The applicant is also providing sidewalks on either side of the internal streets for internal pedestrian connectivity, and they're providing a 5-foot multi-use trail around the perimeter of the property for recreation, in addition to providing an outdoor pavilion and a playground for residents. This is a image from the master development plan. Again, for orientation, Route 522 runs along the property here, and you have access to the site via Trafalgar Square. Sage Way provides a circular vehicle access throughout the property, and you have your single-family attached residences here on the front, along with your outdoor pavilion and playground. The 5-foot multi-use trail, again, runs along the perimeter of the property, providing a recreational amenity, and the townhomes fill out the middle of the property and the perimeter. This master development plan for Regent's Crest appears to be consistent with the requirements of Article 8 Master Development Plans of the Frederick County Zoning Ordinance, and this master development plan is in a form that is administratively approvable. The master development plan was presented to the Planning Commission on April the 4th, and this master development plan is presented to the Board of Supervisors this evening as an information and discussion item. No action is required by the Board of Supervisors, but staff is available to answer any questions you may have. And Mr. John Lewis, representing Jennings Investment, is also here this evening to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions of Mr. Klein? Anyone?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Supervisor Slaughter.
I had a conversation earlier today with Mr. Klein that I just would like to make the board aware of. And one of the concerns that I have, and I realize this is information only and no action required on the board's part, but the Planning Commissioner on April the 4th noted that there were unintended consequences with this particular item in regard to the change that the board made with a buffer amendment. And it was a zoning ordinance text amendment to reduce the required buffer category between townhomes and single-family detached residents. At that time, I believe we were told that there would probably not be any issues beyond simply someone taking a 3-story, wanting a 3-story townhome on the footprint of perhaps where a 4-story townhome would go. And so at that point, we really didn't know that there would be this type of issue with this, because essentially what we've done is we've gone from a 66-unit development to now, what is our total now? Roughly 100 units?
99 units.
99 units. So because of the action of this board in, I believe it was in January, December or January, we now have added an additional 33 homes without any proffer repercussions, and have essentially added more tax burden via schools and their operating and capital costs. So having said that, I would like to make a motion to,
Could I ask you to hold that one?
Absolutely.
Until we finish the
Had full
public hearings?
discussion?
That would be
Absolutely.
great. Other questions or comments, Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Just one. You mentioned B2 in the original. Where was it? Is it still there?
Yes, the B2 portion of the property remains, and that is the portion of the property that fronts onto Frederick Pike, Route 522.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Lewis, anything you'd like to add?
Those are just questions.
Questions for Mr. Lewis? Are there any? Thank you, sir. It says information only, so we'll move on.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
can we discuss this or not?
This is information. You have no decision here.
Okay, then I'll make comments at the end.
Supervisor Slaughter wants to continue her discussion when we finish our public
Okay,
hearings.
okay, that'd be fine.
Is that good?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that'll bring us to a request for a commercial pump and haul at 3149 Front Royal Pike. Ms. Perkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a second request for a permanent pump and haul facility at an existing commercial structure located at 3149 Front Royal Pike. Now, you may recall this was previously denied by the board in August of 2017. Now, a little background, this is a 0.66 acre property that contains a 2,977 square foot structure, which was built back in 1947. Now, the structure was previously utilized for a convenience store, but it's been closed since 2011. Now, this request would be a necessary first step in order to proceed with a conditional use permit to reopen the convenience store. Due to with the conditional use permit, they would need an approved restroom facility in order to get approval from the health department to reestablish the nonconforming use. If I can direct you to the screen on your left, the subject property is outlined in black. It fronts Route 522, and you have Ritter Road in this location. And these are just a couple of pictures of the existing structure that we're talking about. Now, the subject property does have an existing sewage disposal system for the attached residence, which is behind the convenience store, but it does not have any use for the commercial structure. The health department has concluded that an on-site sewage disposal system could not be supported by the property due to insufficient area for the required drain field and reserve area. And the property owner has also been unable to obtain off-site easements. So this, the property owner appears to have addressed the requirements for the county code to utilize a pump and haul for the property. And the property owner has also maintained a relationship with a pumping service, Martin Pumping Service LLC. So tonight we are seeking a decision from the board on this permanent commercial pump and haul request. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and the property owner is here should you have any questions for her.
Any questions, Ms. Perkins, anyone? Supervisor Lofton?
Sir.
The current sewage disposal system, what's the location of that in respect to the structure itself?
I'd have to defer that to the applicant. The health department didn't give me any information for that existing system other than they couldn't use it for the commercial structure.
Okay.
But I'd have to defer to her.
Mr. Chairman,
Other questions? Yes, sir.
just for the record, has there been any change between this application and the original application?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there anything that the applicant would like to add? No, please come forward. We can't hear you, and those following along can't either.
My name is Nancy, and
There you go.
I'm the applicant, and I would like to add a comment. In our last application, they denied us the application because due to, I think there was a misunderstanding. They thought that we were going to put the pump and how in the front, but we wanted to say that it was going to be in the back. And that was it.
Any questions? Is it Ms. Reyes?
Ms. Reyes, yes.
Ms. Reyes? Any questions for Ms. Reyes? Anyone? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Would the board like to handle this one?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Trout?
I move we approve the pump and haul permit request for 3149 Front Royal Pike.
Is a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second, Mr. Chairman.
And a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
This has been before us before, and there was some discussion about if the waste overflowed, if they weren't properly having that pumped out, the waste might flow into the Front Royal Pike area. Being very familiar with this area, and if it goes out the back, that will not be a problem because all that land from the back of the building flows to the east away from the roadways. So that's why I support this pump and haul.
Other comments? Anyone? We're ready to vote? Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn?
Nay.
Supervisor Lofton?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
Aye.
Supervisor Slaughter?
No.
Supervisor McCarty?
No.
Chair votes no. The request is denied. That will bring us to a discussion that I have to get back to. Ordinance amendment shipping containers. Mr. Klein.
Yes, good evening again, Mr. Chairman. This is a proposed amendment to Chapter 165, the zoning ordinance, to restrict the use of shipping containers as accessory storage in certain districts. Shipping containers, for those of you who may not be familiar, are prefabricated durable steel boxes. They're also commonly known as intermodal containers, cargo containers, freight containers, or ISO containers. Our current zoning ordinance does not specifically address shipping containers as accessory storage. Shipping containers are permitted as part of business and industrial uses for such things as warehousing and distribution, and they're permitted where tractor trailers may be parked and stored. Shipping containers as accessory storage was identified in early 2018 as a growing zoning concern. Planning and Development Department received inquiries from citizens about the use of shipping containers on residential lots, and used shipping containers are readily available for sale online. They're generally very cheap, they're durable, and they're easy to set up as storage. Shipping containers are exempt from the Virginia Building Code, and they do not require a building permit to be placed on residential property. This zoning concern was brought to the attention of the Development Review and Regulations Committee in February of 2018, and the DRRC agreed with the concern and proceeded to discuss a text amendment to address the issue. The original proposal to the Development Review and Regulations Committee prohibited the use of shipping containers as accessory storage only on residential lots in the RP Residential Performance, R4, R5, and RA rural areas zoning districts. The original proposal did not prohibit shipping containers being used as storage on lots of all sizes in the RA district or accessory to a bona fide farm or in business and industrial districts. The Development Review and Regulations Committee discussed this amendment at their February meeting and recommended to restrict the use of shipping containers as accessory storage in the RP, R4, R5, and on lots of less than 6 acres in the RA district. They further recommended to allow shipping containers as storage on RA lots greater than 6 acres where the containers would meet the 15-foot side and rear setbacks for accessory structures. Further, they proposed to restrict the use of shipping containers as accessory storage in business and industrial districts. This item was presented and discussed by the Planning Commission on April the 4th, and the Planning Commission endorsed the recommendation of the Development Review and Regulations Committee. This evening, staff is seeking direction from the Board of Supervisors as to whether this item, as proposed by the DRRC to regulate shipping containers in certain districts, is ready to be sent forward for a public hearing. The Board of Supervisors has also provided two additional options. The Board of Supervisors may take no action on this text amendment if they deem it to be not appropriate, or the Board of Supervisors may send this item back to the committee for additional revisions. It would further come back to the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors for a discussion at a date and time to be determined. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and thank you for your time.
Questions of Mr. Klein?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor McCarthy?
Mr. Klein, the concern that was brought to the committee in February, what exactly was that concern? Because I'm getting sort of mixed signals from what's here in our packet. Was it more from a aesthetic standpoint or a zoning, from a accessory building standpoint? What was the actual concern?
The primary concern was accessory building. It is common to find shipping containers on lots where they're set right on the setback line, they're set in the front yards, they're not set on the property lines. The concern was mainly the enforcement of the zoning ordinance requirements and less of a aesthetic.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, Mr. Klein? Supervisor Lofton?
A couple of questions. Number one, do we define, I see they've got the length and the width shipping containers, but the pods, so to speak, the portable pods seem to be very popular nowadays. Would that prohibit someone from putting a portable storage unit on their property while they are loading it with furniture fixtures to be moved?
Those are more temporary, and those wouldn't fall under this restriction necessarily.
Could a shipping container be used as a home?
Shipping containers under the Virginia Building Code do not qualify as a home. They would have to be retrofitted in a way where they would meet all the building code standards, and as I'm aware, there are no examples of that in Frederick County presently.
Okay.
And I guess to further, this text amendment that is being considered does not address shipping containers being used as a home because technically they don't qualify as a home under the zoning ordinance and the building code.
Okay.
Good. Supervisor Dunn?
When I was reading the memo prior to this meeting, currently, if you had this type of a shipping container, does it have to be screened if it were less than 5 acres?
As it is presented, or as the zoning ordinance is currently written?
It's currently written?
It's currently written, no, and as the zoning ordinance is written, no, they would not need to be screened on like a RA lot of greater than 6 acres.
But I thought in this that they said that there was screening. Am I incorrect?
The text amendment, as proposed by the Development Review and Regulations Committee, required that if shipping containers were going to be used as storage and on business and industrial zone property, that they would need to be contained within an outdoor storage yard, which would need to be, and the requirements for an outdoor storage yard require a screen.
Okay, so if it's in a business community, you require some type of a screen, trees or whatever.
Yes, sir.
If it was in a residential area or an area of, let's say, 4 acres or 5 acres or 3 acres, no screening would be required.
The text amendment would prohibit shipping containers on those. And then if it was on an RA lot of greater than 6 acres, it would not need to be screened, but it would need to meet the setbacks for accessory structures.
If a person had a 4.5 acre lot, I'm specifically under 5, they wanted to go and build a shed to store items. He could do that, correct?
They could do that, and they could put a shipping container in that shed if it was completely enclosed, but it kind of defeats the purpose.
My last question is, has this been driven by 1 or 2 complaints, or has this been driven by a series of complaints? And what generated the initial?
We have not received a formal complaint on shipping containers, but it's been an issue that has come to the attention of staff through phone calls, through our planner of the day and the front counter, and also the zoning administrator and zoning inspector noticing shipping containers on lots throughout the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any others?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Slaughter?
Mr. Klein, you said that currently we have an ordinance on the books regarding shipping containers?
They are presently allowed in business and industrial districts as part of a warehousing or distribution, just like you'd have a tractor trailer, and they're allowed where tractor trailers may be parked and stored. Under the current zoning ordinance, you could have a shipping container in those districts or on those tractor trailer parking lots.
Okay, so I guess I'm wondering, it seems to me that the issue brought about was mainly residential, so now we're trying to regulate it in business areas that typically would perhaps have a shipping issue.
That is a correct assumption, yes.
Okay.
Supervisor McCarty?
Mr. Klein, did the committee comment on why 6 acres is the cutoff? If the real issue is people putting these on the property lines versus within the setbacks, 6 acres, the setbacks are pretty far apart on a 6-acre parcel and a 3-acre parcel and a 2.5-acre parcel. Was there any comment as to why the 6 acres was the cutoff?
The committee chose 6 acres because the minimum lot size required for a residential lot in the RA district is 5 acres, but not every property is 5 acres. Some fall kind of, 5.1 acres or somewhere in that between 5 and 6 acres. So the committee discussed that 6 acres be the threshold because it would likely eliminate them on residential lots in the RA district.
So then the follow-up is, was the intention of the committee to eliminate the use within residential properties and just allow it only for agricultural and business purposes?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a couple of comments. I would be more than happy to listen on, even in the B. I don't think you should be messing with this in the M districts, M1, M2. It should not apply there. Probably shouldn't apply in the B3, and maybe not even B2. Maybe B1. That's my personal opinion, and I think it needs to go back for you all to continue the discussion on this. But those containers serve a multitude of purposes in the business world, including reshipping all that package and bracing materials within those containers back to where it came from. So that's my 2 cents. Supervisor?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a comment. I did receive communication from a constituent that was using shipping containers on a 5-acre lot, and with this proposed ordinance would no longer be able to do that.
Right.
And so I had a long discussion with him about that, so that's why I'm also on the same level with you. I'm concerned about this.
His is a rural area subdivided lot. It's residential. And I'm okay with that one.
Mr. Chairman?
Comment, Supervisor Slaughter?
Just one comment with regard to the information in our packet, which was Article 1, the general provisions and amendments that were included here. Under item number 3, and specifically going to the business side of it, it's basically saying that in the business and industrial zoning districts, that these containers may not be stacked, which is really what these containers are made to do in an industrial and commercial setting, and for anybody involved in shipping from environmental aspects. So I would be concerned about the item number 3, that I'm not sure how appropriate that is, given the nature of what these containers are really meant to do.
Thank you.
Others? Supervisor Dunn?
The only comment I'd make is, I know what 5 acres is. I mean, I can picture that in my mind. And this is 8 feet tall, 8 feet deep, 20 feet long, 30 feet long. If you put some trees around that, you'd never notice it. If I built a small shed, did the same thing. So at least from my perspective, I'm not keen on this 5, 6 acre. I think it would probably be inappropriate on a 1/4 of an acre. But I'm not sold on this being a issue unless there's a whole lot of people that come and say it is an issue. So from my perspective, I might just say, leave the current regulations alone unless there's a need to change it. But I'm not comfortable with what we have here right now.
Others?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor McCarthy?
As I look at this, it seems somewhat arbitrary in how we're trying to restrict things based on acreages or certain uses. There's a comment that a bona fide farm may be exempt, and how do we determine what a bona fide farm is? Because I've seen farms on an acre or less, bona fide, in my opinion. If it's really an issue of setbacks, then I think we need to focus on setbacks. And if it's an issue of aesthetics, then we need to focus on screening. I tend to agree with Supervisor Dunn that I don't think it's broke, so I don't think we need to fix it. But if we do go back to fix it, I think we need to focus on what the issue is and not get beyond that.
So if you would allow me, I will comment. The 5-acre is to prevent them on rural area subdivisions, which are strictly residential by nature. It's what they were designed to be. And I think probably these 40-foot containers don't belong on 5-acre lots. Awful small when there's something there that is intrusive. So I think that's really the basis for the 5.
Yeah, I understand that. I would disagree,
Okay.
respectfully disagree with
Got
that.
it. Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. Anyone else? So we're sending it back your way, please, for further work.
Thank you all for the comments. I'll convey that to the committee.
Thank you, sir. Board liaison reports, are there any?
Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Lofton.
if I may, to beat the horse that isn't quite dead yet, Social Services meeting was last Tuesday. And in that session, we learned that the proposed Medicaid expansion in Virginia would add almost $300,000 to the county's budget. And so I think that needs to be taken a real hard look at before any movement is made on that to expand that. There got to be a better way without strapping the communities with hundreds of thousands of dollars in expenses.
Any others? Anyone? All right, this is the opportunity for citizens to comment on any issue that they might like to bring to the attention of their board. Is there anyone who would like to speak on any subject? Anyone at all? All right, seeing none. Board of Supervisors comments. Supervisor Slaughter, thank you for your patience.
Having said what I have said in the past with regard to that particular ordinance amendment, if it is appropriate at this time, unless there should be more discussion, I suspect after the motion, but I would like to make a motion to reverse the action of this board with regard to that ordinance and refer it back to DRRC and the planning staff to evaluate the impact of the unintended consequences, and that being how many other residential units could be added without proffers, et cetera, and various zoning. So if I could make that motion.
And you just did.
Thank you,
So
sir.
you've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Is there any discussion?
Could I get a little clarification on what that motion is intended to do?
The motion, and maybe we could ask planning to explain it, which I'm sure will do a far better job than I will.
If I may interrupt you, we're talking about the master development plan?
We are talking about the zoning ordinance that allowed for a change in the buffers that would essentially allow a more consolidated footprint, if you will, with townhomes and single-family dwellings. And I'm sure I'm not doing that justice. I don't know if Mr. Klein or someone from planning could.
Went from,
But you bring that up in relation to the master development plan we just got information on.
That is correct. And the reason being, Supervisor Lofton, is because essentially what this zoning ordinance allowed is a master plan to go from 66 units because of this action, which was really, I don't believe, what this board intended, to now go to 99 units without any proffers to address education.
This is not the first example. The reduction in buffers
Right.
actually facilitated an increase in density. And I know Mr. Ruddy, I think, would like to comment. If you'd like, sir, please do.
Of course, we'd be happy to help the Board of Supervisors out. Ultimately, we're looking at the previous ordinance amendment, which dealt with buffers. So basically, the board is directing staff to bring that back for a reevaluation and further direction from the Board of Supervisors.
The motion would direct you to reverse the action that we took earlier.
So we would be amending the zoning ordinance, and therefore we would have to go through the appropriate process to amend the zoning ordinance, just as we had the discussion this evening on shipping containers. So we would get the appropriate evaluation and input to bring it back to that point. Now, in this particular case, it would not necessarily affect the master development plan that is going through presently. And I will also point out that the existing zoning for this property is long-standing. And so there's an established density in the RP, which the applicant would be able to develop under. So the number of units is based on the housing type that they could put in there. They may well be able to achieve the same density if they were to choose to put apartments on there, as an example. Having said that, it is very well recognized that the buffer amendment that went through enabled them to place the townhouses on this particular project. So it's very well worth an evaluation, and we'd be happy to bring it back to the Board of Supervisors.
Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Slaughter,
Good.
did you want to comment?
Well-
It's your motion, so
well-
that's why I want to give you the chance, and then we'll go to Supervisor McCarthy.
The motion was to reverse it, but I really and truly, because we do not know what the impact will be, I would like to see that come back to us at our next board meeting.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to offer an amendment to Supervisor Slaughter's motion that we set this for public hearing at the earliest possible time and go through whatever machinations we need to from an administrative standpoint in order to, either table or look at.
That would be automatic with an ordinance amendment? Yes. And required? Does that work?
It works.
Does that address your
I think-
desire to offer an amendment?
Just so we're all on the same page, I think I understand what Supervisor Slaughter wants, but there is a process we have to go through. So I think the question is, do you just want us now to advertise for a change to this ordinance? Or do you want staff to bring back a proposed change for you to look at, similar to what you did tonight, make sure you're comfortable with it, and then we'll schedule a public hearing? Does that make sense?
Slaughter?
What would allow us the most expediency to put the brakes on this until we've had an opportunity to fully evaluate it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir. Mr. Williams.
if the board were to pass a resolution this evening directing the Planning Commission to have a public hearing on a repeal of the ordinance change, that would probably be the most expedient way to do it. That presumably means the amount of time allowed to do any study may not allow a study, but the study could always be done. It could always be reinstated later.
Thank you, sir. Supervisor Slaughter?
However, we could expedite it. The most efficient way is what I would like to see, because we don't know what's out there beyond what we received tonight. And so it does give me pause that we may have others out there.
But your intent is not to curtail study along the path? You just want it in a hurry? Is that fair? Is that?
I
I'm
think it
asking.
will accomplish what we need to accomplish so that we do have an opportunity for further study. So that if there is a loophole that we can address so that maybe it helps whatever this was intended to do, and I think that's the way we need to proceed.
Okay. Yes, sir.
I voted in favor of this, and I still think it's a good change to our ordinance. However, the unintended consequence, or what we didn't see, certainly has come by, and that's a lot of homes. And so it is, as you well know, Frederick County is struggling with money for their school systems and their infrastructures and everything else. And the proffer system has gone by the wayside, and at least at the present time. And this piece was not proffered anyway. It was so far back in the history books. But I would like to see us review this ordinance like we've been talking. I'm not in favor of killing it completely and coming back to restudy it some other time. I'd like to see us review it now, bring it back, and take a look at some of the ramifications maybe we didn't have a chance to look at before.
Okay, so now you all, you all have made it virtually impossible for me to repeat the motion for you.
I think we're on the same page. Are we on the same
I think
page?
we are as well. Maybe Mr. Williams could help us. Maybe not. Maybe Mr. Tierney would like to.
I think I heard two different
I
things.
thought I heard two different approaches. One is to study and come back. The other is to kill it and then maybe take a look. You know, if you pass a resolution tonight directing the commission to basically undo the amendment, that's going to undo it. You know, that's the most expedient way, as Supervisor McCann-Slaughter stated. What I heard Mr. Wells saying is he doesn't really want to kill it. He wants to take a look at it and decide. So I think it's two different approaches.
That's helpful.
Mr. David?
Yes.
I will chime in that the Planning Commission does not have another meeting until June the 6th.
Yeah, we're aware of that one. Thank you. Kill it, then study? Study, and then act based on study.
I would rather know all of our facts before we go forward, so for me, it would be better to put a stop until we have all of the information that we,
Was that the intent of your motion?
yes, sir.
Okay, so the intent of the motion is to reverse it immediately and study. So is there a second?
Well, I'll concur.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, let's give this a try. Supervisor McCarthy.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Supervisor Slaughter?
Aye.
Supervisor Wells?
No.
Supervisor Lofton?
No.
Supervisor Dunn?
Aye.
Supervisor Trout?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Kill it immediately, but begin in our normal structure to study and come back, please. Okay? Good? Okay, all right. Board of Supervisors' comments, anyone?
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Dunn?
We just went through this issue on Region Crest. And we've had lots of people say, Board of Supervisors, why don't you do something? If we have new schools, we have new development, et cetera, why can't you do something? This is a great example of us not being able to do anything at all legally. The only change that we have as a Board of Supervisors is to go and get the state legislature to change the law. So our hands are tied. And I know we've talked about this as an issue, but some type of a method to have capital costs recovered by the county for additional expenses is something that we need to do. In this project alone, there's a $1.2 million capital cost and an ongoing $300,000 expense. So the numbers are big, and just recognize that those listening and those in the audience, this is not something we can deal with, but something that we're going to have to deal with as the county grows. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone? Thank everyone. Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn, sir, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed, no. Thank everyone for their time and attention. We'll stand adjourned.